Welcome to the Growth Through Adversity podcast, where men are forged, not coddled. Here we dive deep into the path of true transformation in pursuit of physical, mental, spiritual, and temporal growth. We talk training, nutrition, business, mindset, and spirituality. We embrace strength and we loathe ease. We reject weakness in every form and cultivate power, the will to power itself. This is the rebirth of modern man. Raw masculinity, tempered by reason, virtue, and right action, because nothing of value is earned without sacrifice. Let's begin our apotheosis together. Welcome to another episode of the Growth Through Adversity podcast with your host, Ragnar the War Wolf. What is up, people? So today I want to talk about something that most men are too embarrassed to talk about or to admit to, and that's pornography. So I'm just going to share with you guys the honest truth. I was used to be obsessed with porn. I went through that phase. I think all men do. And what I noticed was you always felt disgusted afterwards. Like I had betrayed my own self-image. Like it was never something, like it was always something I would justify to myself. And it was always something that, I was able to just kind of like explain away. But it was never something I was comfortable with for whatever reason, right? And as I began to develop and as I began to grow on a spiritual level and on an emotional level, I started to realize why. And for, like I said, for years, I justified it as like a harmless release, but deep down, I knew it was something that was making me weak, right? And when I quit, everything changed. My focus, my energy, my relationship with women, my performance in and out of the bedroom, like 100% everything changed. Everything got better. And it was just like one of those profound moments in my life where I identified something that's very easy to take control of and to take action on. And something that for me personally, and from a lot of the other guys I've talked to, that made a big difference for them. Right. And it's not like, so those that know me, like I'm 100% a fucking wild ass pagan. So this is not a religious dogmatic thing for me. It has nothing to do with shame. It has nothing to do with like suppressed sexual tendencies. There's none of those undertones, none of the common undertones that you find behind this sort of thing when it came to me. For me, it was about power. It was about becoming the kind of man who's in control of himself. And I think that is something far more valuable than any quick release that you're going to get from any disgusting internet porn. So the hidden cost of porn that a lot of people don't realize is there is a biological reality. So porn floods your brain with unnatural levels of dopamine, the same neurochemical hit as hard drugs, things like cocaine, heroin, right? So every click brings a new scene, which brings another dopamine spike. So you're training your brain to chase this novelty, right? And it's just not something that's healthy. Like we have found that there are healthy ways to release dopamine. There are ways that our bodies evolved to release dopamine. And then there are cheap dopamine hits, and drugs are cheap dopamine hits, dopamine hits. Scrolling Instagram, those kind of things are cheap ways to get dopamine hits, but they don't have any real long-lasting value, and they kind of burn out these dopaminergic circuits in your brain, and they desensitize you to dopamine as a whole. So your receptors downregulate, meaning that normal life, normal women, normal sex no longer excites you over time, right? So studies have shown that the long-term porn use leads to a decrease in gray matter in your prefrontal cortex, right? So this is a physiological anatomical change. It's a decrease of gray matter in your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that's responsible for control and decision making. So for self-control and decision making. When I read that, I was like, that kind of put a lot of things into context for me on just how toxic and how damaging it can be. And so like the psychological toll, I think, is even worse, because what happens is, and this is like my same problem with TV and video games and everything that's like an escape from reality. Like, sure, there's a place for it without a doubt. You know what I mean? It's nice. I enjoy TV myself periodically. But what happens is you start living in this fantasy world, right? And with porn, you start comparing real women, your partner, your wife, to digital perfection that just quite literally doesn't exist. It is by definition a fallacy. It is by definition a fantasy, right? It is by definition fiction. So you stop being present in real life. You stop being present in these real-time beautiful situations, and you chase stimulus and stimulation and not actual deep fundamental connection. And I think there's a deep and fundamental difference between those two things. So over time, your brain starts to associate pleasure with passivity, sitting, scrolling, hiding, which on a deep fundamental level kills your masculine drive, because sex is attached on from the male archetype to testosterone, and it is very much the essence of hunting, of chasing, of pursuing, of conquering, of dominating. Like, these are things that are integral in our sex drive that also translate into our business and our professional lives, right? So if you're essentially killing your masculine drive, which is the very essence of who you are, right? Then what about the emotional impact? So the guilt afterwards. This was huge for me. I always felt guilty afterwards. I always felt gross afterwards. I always felt just like I just disgusted with the whole process afterwards. And it's not random. It's your conscience telling you, it's that ancient part of your brain telling you that you're wasting your power, you're wasting your essence on something that is essentially worthless and disgusting. Every time you do it, you feel slightly weaker, less confident, less grounded. Porn creates a split inside you, the man you want to be versus the man you're acting like in the dark. So that dichotomy is huge, because Jung had a term for it, and that was congruence, right? So if your internal self-image was congruent with, was in line with the external person that you actually were, you were generally a happier, more complete human being, right? And he thought that was like the essence of what we were chasing in life, was internal congruence, right? And I agree on a deep level with that idea, is that like you have an internal vision of yourself and then you have an external reality. And the whole idea of life and of self-development is to bring those two things together until they're a congruent and uniform whole, right? Or as close to it as possible. I think our self-image is always going to be a little bit diluted, but damn it, man, we can really work on that. We can really identify the things that we don't like about ourselves and try to bring those things into a cohesive whole, right? So how it kills your masculine energy. So the energy link. So, and we're going to get a little bit spiritual here, but semen, I think, is not just fluid. It's literally, I mean, it's not. It's quite literally raw biological energy. It is. I mean, not only is it is the kernel, the seed form of life itself. It's testosterone, it's zinc, it's mineral, it's nutrients, it's a literal fuel and essence and seed of life, right? So there's something to that. There is a life force to it, 100%. I'm not getting weird here on you like, oh, you're killing babies. But I'm just saying that there is a force of life in that, and every time you expel it, you are giving up a life driving and life giving force, right? When you spill that energy daily and without intention, your drive, your aggression, and your ambition drop. You start to feel lazy, dull, and unfocused because your body thinks you've already achieved the mission. If human beings and every other animal on this planet essentially evolved to reproduce and procreate and produce offspring in their image and continue their species, right? Every time that you spill that, every time that you spill semen, you're essentially telling your nervous system and you're essentially telling your body that you've achieved your life's mission. So there's something to that, and I haven't fully unpacked it, but there's a very deep concept there it's something that, like, I'm not saying it shouldn't be done, because I very much enjoy doing it on a very regular basis, but it's something that should be done with intention and meaning. I believe that 100%. So testosterone and discipline. Men who abstain for even a week from masturbation show measurable testosterone boosts, sometimes as much as 30% or even 40%. So your brain and your body sync. Aggression becomes controlled. Hunger returns, motivation spikes. So these higher testosterone levels are obviously associated with all of these masculine virtues. Discipline in sexual control bleeds into discipline in training, business, and leadership. So sex is probably the most animalistic thing in our entire species, right? It is the most primordial primal thing. It is it's virtually been unchanged since the inception of our species. It's something that we do exactly as the cavemen did, 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 years ago, how proto-humans before us did 7 million years ago, 5 million years ago. Their sex has not changed hardly at all, if at all. You know what I mean? The essence of it is essentially as primal as it gets. It is the root of the primal instinct to reproduce. So if you can learn how to control that urge, that desire, like if you can have discipline over that, oh my God, you can have discipline over every single other thing in your life you could ever imagine, because that's the most ancient. You're fighting 4 billion years of evolution are telling you to spill your seed as often as humanly fucking possible. Every time you have a minute alone in a room, it's telling you to fucking pull on that thing and see what the fuck happens. If you can overcome that over time, man, like you're a force of nature, like without a doubt. So dopamine detox. When you quit porn, you stop frying out your dopamine receptors, right? So your brain rebalances itself. Same with when you get off of drugs, like your brain rebalances itself, your dopamine levels rebalance, and you learn how to find satisfaction in things that actually matter once again. Suddenly the small things hit harder again. A good workout, a real kiss, success at work, sex with your wife that you love. Like you become less numb and you become more alive because your dopaminergic circuits aren't just fucking fried out, and it doesn't take all this artificial stimulation to actually excite them, right? So the nervous system effect, this is something I personally went through too that's a little bit embarrassing. So porn and fast masturbation, which is basically all masturbation, condition your nervous system for a quick climax. It's entirely oriented around the climax. Male masturbation is anyways. Females might be a little bit different, but male masturbation is entirely focused on the climax and bringing yourself essentially to a climax as quickly as possible, right? So instant release. Real sex is the polar opposite, right? It's something that you enjoy and it's sustained simulation that you want to last as long as humanly possible, right? So you're trying to control yourself. You're trying to delay gratification. You're trying to delay ejaculation as long as humanly possible. So they're antithetical to each other, right? They're opposites. So when you're masturbating constantly, or you're going, or you're obsessed with porn, you're addicted to porn, you're watching porn regularly, even on a weekly basis, you're literally training yourself to fail in the bedroom. You're training yourself to prematurely ejaculate as quick as humanly possible, because that's basically fight like you train like you fight. That's basically what you're training to do. So this is something, like I said, all cards on the table. I dealt with this myself. I went through the premature ejaculation, the lack of control. It was fucking embarrassing. I hated it. I felt like it eroded my masculine image. I always had pride in like my ability to please my partner, and it was something that I felt like was stripped from me and lost. And I regained that and retained it through my body, through discipline, right? Through getting control of this. And when I quit porn and I quit masturbating, these things went away, because then the only time that I had only time I ejaculated was in sex, which was the opposite of this. It was trying to go as long as possible, satisfy my partner. And there was just so much more beauty to it and so much more of a process to it. So true self-mastery is in self-restraint. When you learn to hold tension physically, mentally, sexually, you become powerful and you become dangerous. That same skill transfers to the gym, to business, to life. You stop reacting and you start directing, right? There's a fundamental difference there. So, and I've always said, the best defense is a strong offense, right? So if you can get to where you're not reacting and you're directing, you are automatically in a dominant position. I mean, that is the essence of chess. Whoever's attacking is virtually winning the game 9 times out of 10. Aggression pays off dividends, right? Transformation. What happens when you quit? Marriage and intimacy, for one. Like, you focus all of your energy on your wife. The result is you have a better connection, deeper intimacy, more frequency, right, of sex, which is great. We love that as men. And there's a mutual desire there where you both enjoy it. Women, I've come to find, being a married man, women are highly intuitive. They feel everything. They feel things that we are incapable of feeling. Men are much more logical. We're much more analytical. We're much more just driven by things that we can see and things that we can touch, right? And I think that ties heavily into like thousands of years of just evolutionary differences. Women had to be intuitive. They had to be able, they had children with them that were incredibly vulnerable. They had to be able to pick up threats. They had to be able to detect things that were not readily present or not readily clear. Whereas men, when you're out with the hunting band and you got a band of men and you've got spears and you've got weapons and you got to making a bunch of noises, you were much less likely to be preyed upon by animals or marauding bands than the women and the children were. So I think women evolved an intuition on a much deeper and more fundamental level than we did, because they had to watch over the children and they had to be more intuitive to what was going on around them. So they pick up on energy. They pick up on things that we're just totally blind to. So they feel where your attention goes. And if your energy's divided between them and some, fake archetype in your fucking TV screen, they know. They might not know exactly what, but they know that that your attention and your attraction and your energy is not fully directed at them. And it affects them, right? Women are much different than men in the sense that we're very visual. It's very easy to turn us on. Like for them, there's an energy, there's a connection there. There's a whole emotional component to that. And if they feel like your energy and your attention's divided from them and something else, it immediately is a turn off to them, right? So when you show her that she's the only one, that she's the entire object of your full desire, she opens up to you completely. Like that I believe is 100% true. Um, and your presence, man, like porn scatters your attention. It's quitting brings your focus back to the moment. And then, sex becomes a shared experience, not a selfish release with your partner. You learn patience, you learn rhythm, you learn awareness, all the things that make you an incredible lover and a partner and somebody that she desires to have more frequent, intimate engagements with, right? Then your confidence and your focus. So this is something that I think is grossly overlooked with porn, is that it's like it erodes your confidence because it's not real. And then you're trying to like compare yourself to something that isn't real. And you have these ideas about relationships and sex that aren't real. And then you're just always disappointed because you're never living up to this like impossible standard that you've created in your head. And your partner can never live up to this impossible standard that you've created in your head that was literally made through fiction. It's like a fucking James Bond movie. It's like literally taking a James Bond movie as fucking reality. Like it's not. It's fake. It's fucking fake. It's fiction. So when you have your confidence, like your eyes change. You look people in the face again, right? Your handshake, your energy, your posture, they all carry a different type of authority. You can tell when somebody's confident. I hear it from my clients all the time. Like they build their body and they get themselves in like this great, fantastic shape. And they're like, man, it's like, I'm not afraid to talk to women. Like I didn't realize I've been on like 3 dates this month. Women I would have never even asked out and they just immediately said yes. And it's like, because they detect that you're confident, because you're confident in your body, you're confident in yourself, you're confident, you're proud of what your accomplishment rather than disgusted with yourself. So you're very appealing to the opposite sex because confidence is like dominance, you know what I mean? And that goes back all the way to the animal kingdom, right? So because you're not hiding, you're not carrying this secret shame, you're able to become your true self, your confident self. So, and again, like understanding how this ties into your relationship and female arousal, like you have to think about masculine and female arousal on two very different planes, right? So men are very visual. It's instantaneous. Men can be turned on in an instant just by looking at an attractive woman. Like it's so simple for men, healthy men anyways. Women are like, they're emotional and they're energetic, right? It's not visual. They're not turned on as much by the visual. They're turned on by the emotional, by the energetic. Her arousal starts in her mind. Like she needs to feel desired. She needs to feel safe with you, and she needs to feel seen. And if you're neglecting her in any of those ways, even subconsciously, like her arousal is going to deteriorate and wither, right? If you're mentally checked out or your attention is split between her and some fucking weird fantasy, like I said, I mean, women are intuitive. They are going to feel it. It kind of like plays into it's, I mean, you can think about women's arousal in foreplay. Like you have to touch her like she's your favorite thing on earth. And I'm not just talking sexually. I'm talking about like worshiping her femininity. I'm talking about hugging her throughout the day, kissing her, like All of that stuff accumulates with women on a much different level than it does with men. And so you're not even doing it to get sex. You're just doing it because it makes her happy and because you enjoy it and she enjoys it. But that slowly and cumulatively arouses her on a very different level. It's like I said, men and women are very different, you know. You're focused on her pleasure and on not just physical, it's like it's emotional and it's mental, on just fulfilling every part of her that she needs fulfilled. And then and that's when she can completely surrender to you. That's when she feels safe and she can completely surrender to you, and that's when she will make you never forget it, right? Those are when you have those moments. That's when you get, you know, what you want and what you will never forget, because she trusts you. She feels safe with you and she's capable of surrendering and giving you her whole self. The result: better sex, a deeper bond, and a woman that genuinely craves you, which is, I think, something that, whether men want to admit that or not, that's something that we all want on a fundamental level. And it's because you're present and you're not chasing this digital ghost, right? Obviously, there's other elements to this too. We're talking about a healthy relationship here, but I think it's very difficult, if not impossible, to have a healthy relationship if you're also addicted to porn. So the bigger picture, man, masculine mastery. I look at porn as a test. Obviously, it is a temptation. It is the snake in the garden for men, right? Every urge is an invitation. If you indulge, you stay weak. You're not going to like yourself. You're not going to feel good about it. If you resist, you grow stronger. And there's a level of satisfaction in resistance, right? There is a level of satisfaction in wanting to do something and just telling yourself, no, I don't do that. I don't fucking do that, right? Every time you say no, your power waxes. Every time you say no, you reclaim a part of yourself. And that's what separates men who lead from men who follow, right? 100%. It's things like this. Obviously, I'm talking about one very specific thing, but that is the essence of what separates leaders from followers. Is leaders are willing to make the sacrifices that need to be made to develop themselves into their highest state and into a state that others feel is worthy of respect and worthy of following. If a man doesn't have any discipline, if a man's just a creature of indulgence, he's fucking weak. Why would I follow him? He's pathetic. You know what I mean? Why would I follow a pathetic man? Same with if he's out of shape. Why would I follow a guy who's out of shape? He can't even fucking take care of himself. He's fat. He's disgusting. Like, what does that say about his discipline? What does that say about his character? What does that say about how he's going to show up for me? That he's going to be there for me? That he's going to back me up? He can't even back his fucking self up. He can't even keep himself from eating so much fucking food. He gets morbidly obese, right? So energy redirection. This is something that's also very poignant. You can channel that sexual energy into something productive: training, creation, business. Again, if we're talking about it as the life force, like that can be the life force to anything. Not just a human child. That can be the life force to a project, to an idea, to an endeavor. Like it is the masculine procreative force. Use it. That hunger literally builds empires when it's properly directed. Men of discipline are dangerous simply because they're fucking focused. They know what they want and they're willing to sacrifice indulgences and shit that gets in their way for an objective, right? And that is something that most men are incapable of doing and unwilling to do, because it's hard, because it takes years of practice, because it sucks. You know what I mean? Sometimes it sucks. You just want to give in. You just want to be weak. It's easy to be weak. It's hard to be strong, right? So ask yourself this, like, think about your legacy and ask yourself this: do you want to be the kind of man that your son imitates, or that he hides from, that he's embarrassed by? Like, weak men hide behind screens. Strong men use their energy to build, protect, and lead. So that's my thoughts on this. Again, like I said, this is something I personally went through myself. This is something, I'm not just talking here theoretically. This is something that I actually mastered in my life, and that I continue to have domination over, and that I think creates probably the best marriage that I could have ever had. You know what I mean? This is part of it. It's not all of it, but this is a huge part of it. So yeah, man, like I said, I put this information out there. I know it'll piss some people off because taps into some things that they really don't want to address in themselves. But I found all of this to be true. I've listened to a lot of other guys that are very developed and further ahead on me, and they have similar ideas on these sort of things. So there's something to it, and you can do what you want with the information. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, supporting the podcast. I love doing these. So I love talking, I love thinking, I love writing, and I love sharing. So I appreciate every single one. whether it's 8 people or 8,000 people that show up to these. I appreciate every single one of you guys. Have a great fucking day, and I will be tuning back in soon.